Well, thank you guys for meeting us here. You know, John had asked Billy and I to track you down, and we actually had some questions for you. Stephen, I was just wondering really how this whole OMAG concept started.
Well, Kevin, it actually starts with an organization called OML GIT, which was perhaps off the name of Oklahoma Municipal League Group Insurance Trust. And started back in the early 70s. A number of city managers, I was a city manager at that time, was unsatisfied with the fact that the health insurance industry would not accommodate us as city managers as far as getting us budget figures when we needed them, which was in, let's say, January, February, March, April. Typically, we would get the figures June 15th, and we had a budget that was due July 1. So a number of us were talking about the problems with Don Ryder at the league, and the suggestion was raised, could we form our own little insurance pool or insurance group and try and direct the market to satisfy our needs? And so with the help of the league, we were able to start this thing called a group insurance trust. And it was somewhat successful. It wasn't an enormous success. But after a few years, we decided to move into something called the OML Municipal Assurance Group, using a statute that enabled cities and towns to do something that we didn't do before in the Interlocal Cooperation Act. And my good friend Harold was really involved in that change of the organization from OMAG to OMAG.
Well, also in the OMAG, there's a little broader view, I think, also, because coming out of what we call the Nixon New Federalism was a new professionalism we were trying to bring into local government. And at that time, it was really difficult for local governments to really hire people from a lot of the professions because they didn't offer the benefits that they could get in the private sector employment. And there was a program from the National League of Cities for about 5 municipal leagues across the country to work together to do what we were doing here in Oklahoma. So we were part of one of about 5 programs that were funded by the Intergovernmental Personnel Act.
So is this where creating the group health plan became a priority back in 71, 73?
Yeah, this idea of being able to bring more professionalism. The Nixon New Federalism was the idea of devolving greater authority to state and local government, trying to bring professionalism to management, and to be able to do that, you had to compete with the private sector for people, and the employees. The whole economy was doing a whole lot better back then. So how do we retain employees? How do we recruit employees? Employee benefits became a big part of that.
So were you the first CEO?
Well, with Counsel here, I kind of have to say yes and no in that regard, in that when OMAG was formed, the Municipal League was the administrator. Later, when OMAG was formed, if you look at the interlocal agreement, it says that the Oklahoma Municipal League at that time was the administrator of the group. Don Ryder, the executive director of the league, was initially the person from the league staff that served as the person fulfilling the duties of the administrator on behalf of the league. I think in October of 1979, after it had been formed in 1977, I came back on the OML staff, and Don gave me that assignment. And then in 1985, when we separated from OML and became the Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group, then I became the first official CEO of OMAG.
All right, so Harold mentioned OMAG. That was Oklahoma Municipal League Assurance Group?
Municipal Assurance Group.
Okay, and you were city manager back then
right.
when that started rolling
right.
around. So what was it like as a consumer of that? What was it like in the beginning there?
Well, actually, go back a step further. We were a consumer, so to speak, of the health insurance through OMAG. And then when OMAG became formed, we in effect just transitioned from OMAG to OMAG. So from that standpoint, we were still consuming a product. In other words, we were buying a product from OMAG. You know, I served on the board of both OMAG and OMAG, and so from the standpoint of knowing how the two entities were formed and who was behind them and the legwork that was being done behind them, I could confidently go to my city council at that time, City of the Village, and become an advocate for OMAG, because I saw that it looked credible to me and the numbers were sufficient that it looked like it could stand on its own and be viable.
Well, when that started rolling, did the insurance commissioner's office or the legislature, did they get involved in that at all?
No, not from the standpoint of either one of them, frankly. The second one, OMAG, since we were formed under the Interlocal Cooperation Act in conjunction with the Tort Claims Act, there's specific language in there that says we're not operating as an insurance company and therefore not under the guidance of the Insurance Commissioner's Office. So we were free from that regulation.
So there was no state or federal policies that that set in motion the actual becoming of a pool?
Well, the Interlocal Cooperation Act was the legal framework for doing it. No federal involvement whatsoever.
Okay.
That's a state.
But to make that's an interesting point, or I think it is from the standpoint that back at that time, the idea of cooperation between local governments or state agencies was pretty strong. The idea of regional planning, the development of sub-state planning districts, councils of government, 208 wastewater planning, were all federal policies. And I often talk about that from the employee benefits and risk pooling, there was no state or federal policy. This was done purely by local government officials such as Stephen and other city managers, mayors, identifying a need and addressing it without any impetus from the state or federal government.
I see.
Stephen, you said that you were on the board of OMAG and then OMAG. What was the board's involvement when this started coming down the pike?
Well, the board were usually the people buying the policies, and they were the ones who were going to their city councils and suggesting to their boards to buy the product that OMAG or OMAG was selling. So from the standpoint of involvement, I would say they were very involved, because in effect they were investing their city money, their city tax dollars in this program, and they wanted it to succeed. And so you didn't have board members on the initial boards that just wanted to say they sat on a board and have their name on it. These are people who read the material before they came to meetings, understood what was going on, could ask some tough questions of someone like Harold, who at that time was directing the operations. And so I would say they were a hands-on, active group of people and dedicated.